What's up everyone? Alex here. Looking at the landscape of tactical RPGs in 2022, fans of the genre are eating rather generously. And with the release of Square Enix DioField Chronicle, shown here running on my PS4 Pro, that's one more reason for fans to rejoice. Now, I've already covered the demo for the game in a previous video, so I went into this game wanting to answer a very specific question. Is DioField Chronicle worth playing, especially for people who don't normally play tactical RPGs? To me, the hallmark of any good RPG are its main narrative and characters, and DioField does something very unique by blending Western and Japanese storytelling influences in an interesting way. Much of DioField's Western influence can be found in the various political intrigues happening in between nations and the warring factions within each nation. But when you get to how its characters are developed, while their backgrounds may seem to come from Western fantasy tropes, there are little quirks here and there that run contrary to this concept. One particular scene, in which I won't spoil, has one party member revealing their true nature during a pivotal scene, in which the rest of the party reacted to it in a manner similar to that of many Japanese RPGs, which leads to some very interesting conversations later on. That being said, this blend of Western and Japanese influence may turn off certain people expecting the narrative to feel a very particular way. But frankly, as somebody who's not really fond of highly politically charged stories, this mix of styles actually became very intriguing to me, to the point that I'm really fascinated to see the lengths in which the developers really wanted to push the boundaries of each and what they can get away with. It also helps that the Blue Foxes, the squad that you're commanding, are an interesting bunch. Every character in the game has their own unique motivations, with some even harboring secrets, as I've mentioned previously. And while the game doesn't border its character development on the type of Japanese melodrama found in games that feature a younger cast, you really get a good sense of what each character's values are, and where they place their loyalties. You'll get to know more of them in between missions, where you'll even get character quests into that person's background. To that end, you stumble upon new characters on the regular, and eventually, you'll even have more characters that you can make a party out of. But more on that later. Ultimately, I found that I really enjoyed the story and character development in DioField Chronicle. Sure, it feels like a weird mishmash of different styles, but you'll soon find out that this isn't the only thing that they tried to mix and blend here, and I think that's where the strength of this game lies. In fact, when you start noticing the little details in DioField Chronicle's background and characters, you'll start to notice that it's also blending influences in its art design from several different time periods that somehow manages to feel cohesively together. Whether it's the hub area or its battles, everything seems to be carefully crafted. One thing that of course that you'll notice, especially with how the game renders its battlefield, is its unique use of tilt-shift effect. In my impressions of the demo, I mentioned that using the option to view the entire battlefield with its units as figurines wasn't quite helpful to me. But as I continuously played through the game, I noticed that this view really is a good way to get a snapshot of where each of the units are and what the lay of the land actually is. And speaking of, some of the comments from that same video kept mentioning Baldur's Gate and comparing DioField to it, but these comparisons are a bit misleading. These comparisons might have been due to the fact that DioField's battles and its chosen isometric perspective makes its scenery look very similar to Baldur's Gate, in addition to the smaller size of your squad when compared to other tactical games. But unlike the aforementioned game, you're only on these maps when you're engaging in battle. In other words, you're not exploring dungeons or moving from town to town while in this perspective, as you do in Baldur's Gate and other RPGs like it. In fact, after every battle, you're either sent back to the hub area or at a camp whenever you're traveling a great distance. And with regards to the hub area, this is basically where you get to upgrade different base facilities that expand the types of weapons you can buy, or even do things like increase the amount of experience you earn after battle. This is also where you get to talk to different characters and finish their character quests, allowing you to get to know each character even better. Even though the space is confined, the game does offer a fast travel system that allows you to zip from one room to another, and I'm happy to report that there's no loading whatsoever. You just instantly go to that room and you can do whatever you need to do in that room. I also should point out that a generous portion of the game is voice acted, with small incidental unvoiced dialogue reserved for shopkeepers and moments when you talk to one of the blue foxes without a quest icon on them. In other words, just plain small talk. I played through the entire game with English voice acting, and it does sound like this was recorded in the UK, and several commenters in my previous video confirmed this by basing this off of the actors' accents. What I also like about these performances is that they're not over the top at all, and they complement the mood and the visual tone of the game. I do have one minor quibble, which is that the game probably could use a few quality of life features. I want to stress that this isn't a deal breaker at all, because the realization of these missing quality of life improvements just comes with the intense and focused gameplay that I experience of the final product. So if they actually wanted to do a sequel to this, I have a list of improvements I'd like them to do, but otherwise, no deal breakers here. But there's no doubt in my mind that the real star of DioField Chronicle is its combat and progression systems, which is just a sheer joy to play around and experiment with. This is one of those games that merely commanding the blue foxes to auto-attack won't win you battles. Clever positioning, baiting, and proper use of skills will help you take on any sized army and turn the tide of battle quickly. And what I love about this game is that the battles are short, with sub-objectives asking you to finish them in less than a few minutes. Accomplishing this side objective gives you the impression that battles in DioField just don't last long. But accounting for pausing combat to figure out your strategy, surveying the map, attacking specific troops, watching cutscenes, and mapping out your character's route, you'll find that battles actually take a little longer than you might think. In truth, DioField actually pauses this timer whenever you do any of the aforementioned tasks. In fact, one battle that I was told that I finished in 1 minute 55 seconds, in reality took 8 minutes to finish. What I'm basically saying is that DioField does some mental jujitsu on you a little bit, making you think that you're not actually spending a lot of time playing through the game by showing you a time that is definitely not representative of the amount of time you spent playing through each battle. But I find that little mental jujitsu kind of encouraging because it really tricked me into wanting to play more and more of these battles and taking all my characters out and really learning their abilities. And speaking of, while the differences between the characters of the same class boil down to the differences in passive abilities and the weapon you equip, I found it just really fun to swap characters in and out of my party just to see what they bring to the table. And while some ability descriptions sound underwhelming, in practice, they were actually really powerful, which then made me want to see how much more powerful I could make them. I also like the idea of assigning an adjutant to a particular character, because you can only really have 4 characters out at once during battle. There are ways to temporarily swap between characters that they're assigned adjutants to, but overall I didn't find that to be something that I needed to do all the time. That being said, assigning an adjutant allows the primary character in your party to be able to use any of that character's abilities, which is just really cool. That being said, being assigned as an adjutant to a primary character will also mean that they'll get less experience. But hey, they're still getting experience, which is great. In order to balance the difficulty of the game and prevent you from getting overpowered pretty early on, the game utilizes a unit level, which you can level up by upgrading your base facilities, completing quests, or partaking in battle. The unit level scales appropriately to the story, so just by doing the side quests and basically trying to do everything in the game at that point will make sure that you're not behind in terms of what you're able to equip your characters. And even then, because certain skills of certain classes are tied to the weapons that they equip, I often do find myself preferring lower damaging weapons so that I can use abilities that I feel would be more appropriate to the kind of playstyle that I want to play. And I think thinking about what abilities you want to use rather than thinking about builds without also having to worry about making a mistake, I think is one of the best things about DioField. DioField systems allow for some really cool experimentation because you're not really locked into a specific style of gameplay. I do find that most other tactical games can seem very intimidating, especially because they have a very defined way in which they tune their gameplay. But with DioField, you can have the same confidence that you would playing a traditional RPG with the way that you're building characters, and you'll be just fine. I think that's really cool. All that said, I do find that the normal difficulty is perfect for anyone who's dabbling in tactical RPGs. Naturally, there are options to turn it up higher or lower, so choose the difficulty that you feel is most appropriate for you. All in all, DioField's battles are fast-paced, despite tricking you that you've completed some of these missions within a minute or two. And I love that the feeling of engaging in these battles feels like you're a burst mage trying to just unload all these massive abilities at one time in your characters. There is an element of strategy to this. You can't just blitzkrieg everything. There are missions that require you to defend certain spots. But overall, I have nothing really bad to say about DioField Chronicle's battles. It's absolutely one of the most fun battle systems I've played this year. Ultimately, DioField Chronicles comes across as a game that's trying to get more people to try out tactical RPGs. And quite frankly, with how dominant that genre is this year, I can't blame Square Enix for even trying. The decision to try to blend Western and Japanese storytelling might rub people the wrong way, but if you approach it from a different perspective and really try to see that these developers are trying to experiment with these styles in order to deliver a narrative and character experience that's different from any game out there, as of course evidenced by its art style and the time periods it draws inspiration from, that's where you start really seeing the magic behind DioField. And as far as new IPs go, they did a really good job making this game, and I really can't say enough good things about it.